Meeting for Monday, October the 12th, 2020. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And tonight we don't have any presentations and awards, nor do we have any personal appearances, so we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Two items this evening. Start with just talk briefly about building activity in the city. Looking at the permit activity, we had a very strong September for new home construction, 21 new homes permits issued. Still a little bit behind our 2019 numbers, but we're having a very strong October as well. So hopefully this fall will get us to surpass our totals from last year. You might note in our miscellaneous residential permits, this has been an extraordinary year for what we call home improvement projects. So sheds, roofs, decks, fences. You can see we've issued over 1,000 miscellaneous permits this year. This time last year, only 580 permits. So a lot of people doing a lot of improvements to their property. That's definitely good to see. On the commercial side, Compass Health, their large new office building, a lot of the site work is done. They're doing their sheetrock on the inside, so they're moving very quickly through, on construction of that building. Lofts at Foxridge, the apartment community. Of course, the clubhouse is quite visible at their main entrance, but they started several of their apartment buildings already and started a couple of the garage structures as well. So all those buildings are going vertical. They intend to complete the clubhouse and probably 3 of the apartment buildings, get those open, but they'll continue the construction until they get all the buildings done at one time. So, but they have a plan where we would allow them to occupy the front buildings, and then they basically fence off the construction areas from where residents would be living. So that's good to see, and they're doing a fantastic job. Great company to work with. Van Trust will be starting the first industrial building down at the Raymore Commerce Center later this month. It'll be their first building's about 560,000 square foot. Don't have a tenant. They haven't identified a tenant yet, but they, as they indicated to the council, they are moving forward with their building, and Dean Avenue has been paved and completed throughout the entire development. So that's another nice improvement down there. The Venue Townhomes, they're at the Dean Avenue and North Cass Park. We expect site work to start here within a October, November time frame. They still have another approval to come through City Council for a final plan of the development, but they want to get started on the infrastructure improvements that need to be made. A second item then, just to look at the schedule, upcoming meeting or planning commission. We'll have a meeting on October 20th. They have 3 items on that agenda. They'll consider the 33rd Amendment to the Unified Development Code. These are minor items, miscellaneous items that they consider in their annual review of the Unified Development Code. If they identify a few changes or adjustments that need to be made, they bring them together once a year as one amendment, and that will have a public hearing. We'll also have a preliminary and final plat for North Cass Plaza. This is the commercial strip of land on the south side of North Cass Parkway between I-49 and it goes just to the east of Dean Avenue. There was a plat approved many years ago for this property. That plat expired. They're now having interest in the commercial land down there, so they want to get the plat reinstated, and that way they're able to better react to tenants as they're looking to purchase the property. I think the activity with Van Trust property has spurred a lot of interest down there. So we'll see about the preliminary and final plat on the 20th at the Planning Commission meeting. That's currently what we have scheduled, and that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Cataract. You will remember that at a council meeting, 2 council meetings ago, Captain Wilson had prepared a pretty extensive report for the council, and we interrupted that with his commendation. He has been kind of whiny ever since about being able to come before you and make that report. So I would ask Captain Wilson to report out for the police department and emergency management.
Thank you, sir. Again, I was going to touch base with and highlight a few crime prevention tips. I think that they're very much needed. I know that we ended my comments the other day with a report of some scams. Since that time, we've taken 3 more reports similar to that one. So I want to go back and highlight, very good, thank you, highlight a few crime prevention areas. Personal safety, your home, your vehicle, your neighborhood, identity theft, and cyber crimes are the big ones right now. Why is crime committed? Desire, and the big one is opportunity. It's always opportunity. How to prevent yourself from being a victim. Be aware of your surroundings all the time. Don't get distracted with your cell phone, radio, or other people in the car, walking around with earbuds on. I think you can also talk on the phone with those earbuds, so it's a big distraction. The cars. If you're in a car and you're going to park, make sure you're parking in a lighted area when you get out. Don't park, for the women, don't park near big, large trucks. You can't see what's around the truck or the big van. Make sure you're parking in an area where you can see and know your surroundings. And another one for vehicles is, I don't know how many people in here, but it seems like every time I get in my personal car, it is on E. I would recommend that the car be at least a half a tank or full. Always trust your instincts. If it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, doesn't look right, it's probably not right. Look around, see who's around you, and take action. How to prevent yourself from becoming a victim in your home. Deny access to a Target. Well, actually, this is also for going out shopping as well. I don't know, I don't personally carry a purse, but I know that when I go to the stores, I see a purse in a cart, and I see what appears to be the owner of the purse halfway down the grocery aisle or the store aisle. Stay with your purse. That also includes when you're putting groceries or store-bought items in the back of your vehicle. Some folks have a tendency to put some things in the front seat, a purse or other belongings, and then go back and leave the back hatch open to the vehicle and start unloading groceries. And when they get back into their car, their purse is gone or their cell phone's gone or other items that they've left in the vehicle. Use common sense when you're out. When walking, avoid dark areas. Walk in pairs. It's always important to walk in pairs. You're less likely to become a victim. Carry defensive safety equipment, mace, loud alarms. A whistle is pretty small, but if you have a whistle on you and blow the whistle, that's kind of a universal sign that signals for help. Have a plan in your head. Always have a plan. If you are walking, look ahead 20, 30 yards. See what's around you. Make sure there's lights ahead. Don't walk into the dark area. You know, if you know that you want to go to a certain section of the store, make sure you take your belongings with you so you're not missing those belongings. Have a plan. If you've ordered packages, I don't know how many of you folks order packages, but remember, if it's going to be delivered in the morning and you're gone at work all day long, that package could sit outside your door all day long. It might not be there when you get there. How to protect your home. Keep your bushes trimmed and neat. Have motion sensor activated lights outside. Set up an in-home security system. And another big one for us, I hope that most of the citizens recognize that if the officers see a garage door open in the night, we try to make contact with the homeowner and advise them to shut the garage door. Everybody's busy these days, and everybody can forget to lock your doors, lock your car doors, and shut your garage. But it's imperative that you do that. And also make sure that as you're locking all these doors, take all your valuables outside of your vehicle. Don't leave them in the vehicle overnight or all day long out in the driveway or out on the roadway. The scams, down to some scams, and these are all just highlighted areas. I mean, we could talk all day long about all the crimes that are happening to people these days, but the biggest scam right now is these folks that call you and pretend that they're a business, pretend that they're a police, courts, somebody in jail, and they're asking you to go and purchase gift cards. There's no entity on earth that I'm aware of that's legal is going to ask someone to go purchase any kind of gift card and send them to them. Now, these folks do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all over the country, and they're slick. They're very good. They call you. They have their story down pat. They have whatever you're going to ask to try to find out if they're, part of a scam or a crook. They know what to say to keep you hooked on the phone. They know what to say to keep you hooked on the internet. They know what to say. This is their job. And unfortunately, oftentimes, we're not going to be able to catch those folks. It's a shadow in the dark. If they're not locally, a part of a local ring doing this, they may be in New York, Oklahoma, California. They're all over the place. And folks need to be very careful. That's the biggest scam that's going on right now is since 2 weeks ago, we've taken 4 more reports of people going out and purchasing gift cards and sending them. And these are smart people. These victims are very smart people, and they realize that after the fact, the story was so good, they bought into it. So that's all I have. You have any questions?
What's that? What an
Like
ending.
clockwork.
What an ending. Yeah. Anybody have any questions of the captain? Thank you, sir. Good report. Appreciate you.
And sir, I believe you've actually been, they seem to have just enough information with the gift card scam to know somebody in authority is asking somebody. I believe our first one was you writing Mr. Icky to ask him to go get some gift cards for
That was
you.
an email.
Yeah. So they're slick. Thank you, Captain. Just to remind the council, we do have a work session next week, October 19th. There are currently 2 items on the agenda for that work session. We will have the budget on, even though the first read is tonight, for every opportunity prior to final read of the budget. And then we're going to be talking to you about, I'll call it our deployment plan for Election Day. We have 3 locations here where people are going to be able to vote. The overarching statement from Mr. Fletcher down at the county is they are currently estimating 5,000 people, in excess of 5,000 people at each of those polling locations on Election Day. So it's going to be busy. So we'll be talking to you about that. That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's the rack and then there's Centerview. Where's the third location?
What was the old First Baptist Church?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Is that all, sir?
That concludes
Okay.
staff reports.
There are no committee reports tonight, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have 2 items for approval, and I would entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend,
I move that we approve consent agenda items. Item A, City Council minutes, September 28th, 2020, and item B, acceptance of public improvements, Eastbrook First Plat.
thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. Now move on to unfinished business. Can I please have the second reading of Bill 3572 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3572 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from A Agricultural District to R1P Single Family Residential Plan District, a 155-acre tract of land located west of North Madison Street and south of 163rd Street in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3572, Parkside Subdivision Rezoning.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second the motion,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3572. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3573 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3573 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, establishing procedures and requirements relating to construction and deployment of small wireless facilities.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3573, 32nd Amendment of the Unified Development Code.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3573. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3574 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3574 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2020 capital budget.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3574, Budget Amendment Depot Enhancements.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3574. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to new business. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3576 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3576 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the fiscal year 2021 budget.
Thank you. This item requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time, and I'll ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your Honor. The city manager's proposed fiscal year 2021 budget was presented to the City Council on August 17th. The City Council had the opportunity to discuss the budget at that meeting and subsequently at the work session that you held last week. The budget is now presented for the first reading. The fiscal year 2021 begins November 1st, 2020. Staff is requesting the public hearing be opened and continued to the October 26th meeting to allow for public input as well at that meeting.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of staff at this time? If not, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget as presented by City Manager on August 17, 2020, in its entirety, with the following items added and to be expensed to the appropriate departments and funds using the funding source of available general fund balance. Those items added are streets attenuator for $28,390, for streets department out of the dump bed, plow, and spreader for $77,972, and streets a traffic calming study for $50,000, and for police a LPR and LPC, I forget the acronym, for $45,000, and for parks the Hark Ridge Park Inclusive Playground for $100,000.
Thank you. They're just to delineate for you, that's a license plate reader, license plate camera.
License plates reading, license plates camera. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So I'll entertain is there a second for that?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3576. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
I don't send things out to the council as a whole, but I did send Mr. Fearborn an email this past week. It was a bit of a press release from MoDOT. Their attenuator crashes are up, was it over 150% for the year, sir?
That's correct, sir.
Traffic's way down, because of the COVID virus, but collisions and motorists not paying attention, unfortunately, as evidenced by those crashes are way up. So this is a very timely purchase for us for the safety of not only our people, our employees, but for the motorists themselves, because it does typically reduce the severity of the collision on the part of the motorists.
Thank you. I know we have a motion on the floor, and it's a bit out of the ordinary, but I forgot to mention that we do have a public hearing. If anybody from the public would like to address the council at this time before we vote on the first motion, I'd open the floor for that. Seeing no one come forward, is there any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to voice concern about the $50,000 for the traffic calming study. I'm not sure, I'm really not in favor of that. I'm just concerned that that's quite a bit of money to spend, and I'm afraid that each of those things that we're going to find with that study are going to be quite expensive. I'm not sure. I just am not convinced that this is the right time, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Crass could speak to that briefly. You know, do we have a plan, or Mr. Fearborn, do we have a plan if we get back this study that says we need to narrow roads, we need to build medians in roads, et cetera? Do we have funds from somewhere those suggestions are going to come? I hate to spend $50,000 just for a study that then we can't afford to do anything with it.
The study will definitely, I can say two things to it. The study will definitely find problem areas. Some of the ones that we have discussed with you all, like giving 58 Highway a major makeover, you will find that these are going to be some of them will be very expensive fixes. Do not know, one of the unknown areas is if they can find, for areas like Sunset South, a way to calm that traffic down that is less expensive than some of the measures that we have looked at that would still work. But yes, some of them we will not be able to get around the need for, I would presume, bond money to handle those.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year in February, Mr. Jacobson and I went to a program where they outlined for about an hour all the things that they have done in traffic diets in Lee Summit. And they've done some tremendous things, taking roads that were rural back roads to make them accessible for bikes, as well as have curbs and things like that. And we are in the same type of areas where we have improvements that we're wanting to do, such as the Kurzweil Road was a good example. If you would go back, I can't remember if it was MARC or if it was Mid-America Regional, well, that's the same thing as MARC, Mid-America Regional Council, or whether it was the other one.
Municipal League?
I can't remember. MML? Okay, thanks. But the city manager at Lee Summit was sitting next to us while we were doing it, and it was really pretty interesting. I did not think it would be, but it was pretty impressive, the things they had done. So I direct anybody, I'm sure that presentation is available on the internet if you wanted to seek it out. We were in Sugar Creek last year. Thank you.
But I'm quite sure a lot of those were identified through a traffic calming study for them to be able to move forward on some of those items.
Yes, that was the entire program for the evening.
Gotcha.
I think actually you were there as well, Mayor.
Yep.
I remember, and your wife. No, yeah, I remember now. Thanks. I rode with you.
Anybody else have it? Yes, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed this too, and I brought it to the attention of the city manager and yourself just very briefly. And when I see studies for $50,000, my concern is that, yes, we may find things we can't afford, or we may find things that we kind of already knew. I was reassured by the city, and I feel confident in their answer that, A, they're probably going to find things that we didn't quite think of, or maybe we're just too close to the problem to see some of the solutions. And I was also reassured by the city, and I've seen this in the past, that even though we're approving it for $50,000, hopefully that end amount will be significantly less than that. We won't have to spend the full 50. So I'm going to support it in hopes that we can A, get some good results out of it, and B, hopefully spend a little less than that $50,000 that we're initially approving for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further
Thank you,
discussion?
Councilman Adelgawad, for recognizing it too.
Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Fearborn. There are streets that we have, like South Sunset. You know, you got your regular North Sunset is patrolled, but South Sunset isn't, and it's highly speed, uncontrolled by speeders all the time going down there. We've complained about that in the whole neighborhood for a long time. And they've sent out and they try to get police officers to give speed traps and give tickets. It's just a wider road, and there's other roads in the south side and other places. But that's why I think we need this calm. We need to really go out there and see these streets. A lot of people do not know that exists for speed and traffickers. We have a lot of children, and the neighbors complain and are unhappy that the children come out, and these cars, it's a 25, and they're doing 40. And you know what the sad thing is? Sometimes I'm sitting after watching people, and a lot of them are gray-haired people, senior citizens, coming down Sunset at 45 miles an hour. People just don't pay attention to some of these roads. And so it is becoming a very big problem. It has been for a number of years over in Huron. So that's why I kind of like that idea, to really find out what we can do with these streets, how we can maybe control it better to save any children getting run over, or people. But there's more than just South Sunset. There's other streets that I hear from. So I'm kind of approved on that. I like the idea.
Mr. Holman, do you have, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do respect all my colleagues' comments. And, you know, when you see $50,000 for a study, you go, wow, that's a lot of money. But I think really kind of what sold me is when Mr. Crass said that he'd like to have another set of eyes and some help with the traffic calming. I know that his department does a lot in-house, saves us a lot in what he does in-house. And so when he says, I need some help, and I think, you know, we owe it to his department to get him some help. And, you know, who knows, after we do this study, he's going to be more of an expert with it as well. So we don't know what the future with that brings. But, you know, I do, if you go, it just seems the norm now that people run stop signs, they speed, they're too comfortable in their cars. And I would hate to not do something that we help the safety of our citizens and our guests to our community. And this will help, and if we can find some areas that we need to do, and you know, let's find out now, and let's budget for it and plan and take care of them. So I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to discuss any portions of the budget? No amendments? Mr. Holman.
In regards to the traffic calming study, I would, a lot of times we forget, we look at this and we see the title of what we're putting money into. But many times by the time we get to the final product, we've kind of tweaked that a little bit or morphed that. I think it might be a value, and we could certainly, something staff could look at, that maybe we add in there. I know one of our big projects, and staff's been on this for quite a while, is 58 Highway is lifeblood. It's also like a river that divides our city in half, and maybe as part of that project we can have that same consultant look at ways to improve pedestrian access across 58 Highway and make that a little less of a chasm between the north and the south in the city. So like I said, we've done that a number of times with a lot of these projects that we've put out for bid with consultants, where we've kind of tweaked kind of the final end. We kept the same basic idea in place, but we've asked for some specifics, kind of add-ons, and that's been very valuable to us.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Item B is the sidewalk on undeveloped lots. And there are three major areas that we're going to discuss here tonight and ask for staff reports on. So it does require a public hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Carteret will be making the staff reports on all three of these areas.
Thank you, sir. I'll start the public hearings with a brief overview of the program and then go into the three specific neighborhoods where we are looking for direction from the council. Our Unified Development Code does require a property owner of an undeveloped lot to install sidewalk upon that lot when 66% or more of the lots on the same side of the street in the same block already have sidewalk constructed, and it's been at least 3 years since the first home received a certificate of occupancy within that phase of that subdivision. In January of each year then, staff goes through the city to determine what lots now meet the threshold. And what typically happens is, for example, the lots that are on the agenda this evening did not meet the threshold last year because there were additional lots that had no homes or sidewalk installed on it. But these are all active subdivisions when homes are being constructed, and that's when we reach that trigger point. So this year, staff throughout the entire city identified 12 lots that met the threshold requirement. We send notice out to those property owners, give them until August 1st to either install the sidewalk or secure a building permit for a home on the lot. 4 of those property owners were issued building permits and installed the sidewalk. So we have the remaining 8 who were notified in September of noncompliance with the code, and they were notified of the public hearing this evening. And they were advised that staff would be requesting the city to authorize the installation of the sidewalk and then levy a special assessment against the lot for the cost the city has to install the sidewalk. The program itself has built into it an automatic extension from the public hearing this evening. So if the city authorizes the installation of sidewalk upon any of these lots, no work would begin by the city before September 1st of 2021. So almost a year from now before we would even go upon the property to install the sidewalk. If the property owner installs a sidewalk or secures a building permit before September 1 of 2021, the city will take no action. This evening, what we're looking for from the council is for the council to determine that the city is going to install sidewalk upon all 8 of these lots, and a resolution confirming that decision would be made and presented to the council on October 26th. So this evening, we have 3 neighborhoods where we're looking at sidewalk installation. The first is the Alexander Creek subdivision. There were 5 lots identified as meeting the threshold. They're all on Creekview Lane. The property addresses themselves are the 1903, 1907, 1909, 1913, and 1919 Creekview Lane. All 5 of these properties are owned by Alexander Creek Holdings. Staff has been in contact with Tyler Salee, who represents Alexander Creek Holdings. He's aware of the requirement, aware of the September 1st, 2021 deadline, and they are actively constructing homes within this neighborhood, and they fully intend to have builders secure permits for these before the September 1st deadline. This is an important segment. You will note there are homes on either side of these individual lots that have been identified, so it's an important segment for the residents to have continuity to be able to walk down Creekview Lane to get to the amenities of the subdivision. So that would conclude the Alexander Creek discussion. Do you want to take them individually, sir?
Yeah, we'll do them individually. That way I can ask if anybody from the audience wishes to speak to that particular project.
That's all I have for Alexander Creek.
And does anyone have any questions of Mr. Carteret at this time? Hearing none, there is a public hearing that is open. If anyone from the public would like to address the council on the Alexander Creek plats, lots 73, 77, 78, 80, and 75, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing on the Alexander Creek projects, and I'll open the public hearing on the Madison Creek project and ask for a staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. There are 2 lots, 2 properties within Madison Creek, 431 and 433 Spring Branch Drive. Both of these lots are owned by Kevin Hardy Homes, LLC. Again, this is a sidewalk segment that's a gap between, we have existing homes to the east and west of these 2 lots. So again, another important sidewalk segment for the residents to be able to get to the amenities within the subdivision itself. Again, this is a builder that's active within the city, not only this subdivision, but other subdivisions, been made aware of the deadline, and again, we fully expect permits to be issued on these lots before that September 1st deadline. That concludes the Madison Creek presentation.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Carteret on Madison Creek? Hearing none, there is an open public hearing at this time. If anyone from the public would like to address the council with regard to the Madison Creek third plat lots 132 and 133, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing on that particular project and open a public hearing on the Westbrook at Creekmore and ask for a staff report. Mr. Carteret.
Thank you, sir. This property is at 1503 Lewis Circle. It's the only undeveloped lot on Lewis Circle. It's actually a lot that came before you last year, but it did change ownership. And with the change of ownership, we went ahead this year, provided that extension of time, and noticed to the current property owner. I have spoken to that property owner, and they purchased the lot with intent to build on it, and they're aware of the September 1st deadline. And again, another segment that we feel the residents there along Lewis Circle would like to have completed. That concludes.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Carteret on this item? Hearing none, there is a public hearing open. If anyone would like to approach and address the council on the Westbrook at Creekmore 7th Plat Lot 168, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing at this time and ask the council if anyone has any additional questions for staff at this time. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the sidewalk on undeveloped lots.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the plan for the sidewalk on undeveloped lots as presented to this evening. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the oh, yeah, sorry, Mr. Holman, go ahead.
I was just reminiscing, I think Sandra will remember this. This used to be, I think, a Saturday affair where we had 80 lots on the agenda. We had to call for a special meeting, and we had to listen to public testimony from anywhere from 20 to 30 individuals. Oh, wow. So the list has been pared down greatly, sir.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 20-52 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 2052 by title only. Resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Carteret to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Earlier this evening, Council approved the 32nd Amendment to the Unified Development Code that established the requirements for the installation of small wireless facilities. This resolution would establish the fees associated with carriers installing the small wireless facilities within the public right-of-way. There would be an initial application fee for the installation, and then there would be an annual fee for each small wireless facility thereafter. We have incorporated the ability for a carrier to do a consolidated application, which it helps staff, it reduces staff time overall, and likely the route the carrier would come in and want to do one application covering a lot of different installations. In that case, we have also provided a reduced fee for consolidated applications. The fee structure that we are proposing here is the common fee structure that we're seeing communities throughout the state of Missouri utilize. So we're consistent with those that have established this program, what fees they are finding are necessary for staff review and inspection of the installation processes themselves. So staff does support approval of the resolution. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Resolution 2052, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve Resolution 20-52. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3577 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3577 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2020 operating budget.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Williams to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you this evening for your consideration is a budget amendment amending the fiscal year 2020 operating budget. During fiscal year 2020, the following operating transactions occurred, causing projections to exceed budget and require budget amendments. The Administration Department had additional expenditures associated with the retirement of employees. That's $73,556. The Buildings and Ground Department had additional expenditures associated with the telephone system. That's $10,000. The Finance Department had additional expenditures associated with credit card processing fees, and that's $16,000. And then the last one in the general fund is during 2020, COVID-19 caused a national pandemic, leading to expenditures that were not budgeted. They were reimbursed by Cass County through the CARES Act. So that budget amendment is $260,000, and there's revenue and expense, so it nets to zero, but we need to include that. And there were also expenses in the restricted revenue fund that were not budgeted for fiscal year 20 related to annexation, employee training and safety, communications signage, and the police firing range rental. And that's $61,060. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3577, Budget Amendment, Fiscal Year 20 Operating Adjustments.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3577. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3575 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3575 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authoring the city manager to enter into an agreement with Wilson and Company for the Ward Road Design Project, City Project Number 2360301, in the amount of $413,103, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Kraft to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Staff is recommending award of the design contract for Ward Road from 58 Highway to 163rd Street to Wilson and Company. I'd like to introduce, behind me and to my left is Garrett Hummel, the project manager with Wilson, and we do recommend award of this contract. That concludes staff report.
Any questions of staff? Yes, Ms. Abdelgawad.
Sorry, just a quick question I was going to try to resist, but I was wondering if these pages were what convinced Mr. Fearborn that this is the right company. This is a pretty incredible estimate worksheet, something, I've never seen anything like it before, and that's awesome to see.
The level of detail was amazing. The amount is actually within our budget, what we had thought that this was going to be, because this is an incredibly, as you all know, extensive project. So we have very, very good experience with this company, and that would be expected.
All right. Thank you. We haven't motioned on this yet, have we?
No.
No, okay. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item, though.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3575, Award of Contract Ward Road Design.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. A motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3575. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Holman.
Just a comment from Mr. Fearborn and Mr. Krass. I've kind of made it before, but my math is somewhere around 70 days from the time of the election, and one of the largest and most comprehensive street projects on that bond issue that was approved slightly over 2 months ago is now before us for contract for design. That's impressive work, sir. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Abdelgawad.
One other quick question, and tell me this may be a little premature, but everyone's going to be asking, and really they already are, do we have a timeline?
Mr. Kraft, we want, after you, sir. I may dovetail off of this, by the way.
We are doing all we can to expedite this project. We are very hopeful, at this time at least, of a spring start to coincide with the work that's MoDOT is doing at the roundabout at 58 and Ward Road, so that we minimize the disruption. So that is the goal for this project. That's why we brought the survey contract to you in advance. That's why we expedited this design selection. We are very hopeful to start construction in the spring, late spring.
And we will actually, next month, be bringing the bond parameters ordinance to you all so that we can actually pay these people who have actually started working for us. Don't be nervous.
Don't you mean maximal disruption for the minimum amount of time? Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Abdelgawad.
One more quick question, just probably because this is so exciting for me and important for people in Ward 4. We've been waiting for this for a long time. I know for some of the previous bond projects, we've had signage out, letting people know that it's a bond project, kind of thanking them for that vote. I'm wondering, this is kind of twofold. Number one, are we going to do that? Number two, are we going to be able to let them know that Ward Road is our project, but the roundabouts are not?
Yes. We are also looking to kind of copy and paste the information campaign that we did when we reconstructed Johnston about 5 years ago, where we would be sending mailers to everyone along Ward Road in the neighborhoods, giving them the timeline information, a place to call if they have any questions, and then we'd also be placing out the bond signs. While we will attempt to draw the line that MoDOT is the one installing the roundabouts, that information will probably also be important to go at the same time that we're sending our information, and that I'd fully expect that we would be coordinating with MoDOT as best we could.
Yes, Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I totally agree. I know when you talked about Ward and everybody like to get it done, but again, you have MoDOT want to do the roundabouts, and we do got to coincide that roundabout to the Ward Road. We do not want to get too far ahead of them and they come in late. That would be such a disruption. So I agree. It's really got to give some patience on that, because we are working with MoDOT. And if we can correspond those together, especially that roundabout, that's what we need to do. So a little patience on that is probably necessary.
Did you have something, Mr.
Yeah, if the council will permit me, a tangential item to all of this, I'm going to ask Mr. Cataret to discuss, just very briefly. He served on the Facilities Committee for Ray-Pec School District, and they have made some pretty significant announcements relative to facilities that will be impacted here. Mr. Cataret?
Thank you, sir. One of the items with the school district going for the bond issue, I believe at the April 2021 election, one of the number one project that they would hope to get support from the voters on would be the freshman center, what they're calling the freshman center, out at the East Middle School property, where they have a very large tract of land there between the, I guess it would be to the west of the East Middle School. There is a large land area which would be starting out as a freshman center. They would also have ancillary facilities with that, track and practice fields and the like. So that would be their number one priority project that they're looking to have. I believe the 2023-24 school year would be their target date for that.
Okay.
It'll be critical prior to that build out and occupying those buildings that everything we can do to improve 58, improve Ward Road, improve Kurzweil. Those are all going to be traffic patterns going out to that particular location. Again, it'll be increased by some of the other amenities that they're putting out there. Will lead to a rediscussion of what we're going to do in the 58 corridor.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Mr. Krass, Mr. Fearborn, also with those two roundabouts, was MoDOT also doing the 291, 58 intersection as well? Is that also in that same timeline? It sounds like jurisdiction, but just curious because of the school
I'm
district.
sorry, yeah. You can't hear a head shake. They have 3 projects programmed. I don't recall the timing, but they are proposing to add turn lanes at 291 and 58, and then Prairie Lane and Ward Road. And my focus has been on their timeline for Ward Road.
That's understandable. No, just to comment about the school district, I was curious if that piece was going to be included in that timeline. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3578 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3578 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute the First Amendment to the amended and restated service contract for sewer service with the Little Blue Valley Sewer District.
Thank you. Do you want me to carry the water on this one, Jim? Okay. So, as you know, I sit on the Board of Trustees, I sit on the Mayor's Advisory Board, and I also sit on the Middle Big Creek Board of Directors, or Board of Trustees. And so within the last year and a half, one of the 14 users of the Little Blue Valley Sewer District got an astronomical and probably one that they didn't deserve to get, a bill, and asked about how the different rates were made. And of course, the current rate method, which has been in place since 2001, uses a flow projection to calculate a pro rata share of the flow that is used to allocate charges to customers. And one of the things that we've been really good at, and I'm really proud of Mr. Krass and his team for doing, is the infiltration program that we've had going that has minimized a lot of the runoff water into our system, which then calculates into wastewater, which might then raise our fees. And so rather than that on a regular flow rate, they wanted to recommend that a rate method that uses a 5-year rolling average instead of a flow projection to define our customers' pro rata share on that. And so a review of historical flow data indicated this to be much more accurate with the way that that we're charged, and then we charge our customers as well. So they hired Reftelis, an organization that does does reviews on rates, utility rate consultant to be exact, to conduct a rate study. They did a rate study, and their recommendation was reviewed and approved by the Technical Advisory Committee. That's the one I don't sit on. And then the Mayor's Advisory Board, which I do sit on, the Middle Big Creek Advisory Board, and the Board of Trustees. And everybody unanimously supports this implementation. This change requires that all service agreements be amended before implementation, as a methodology is specifically defined within the service agreement. So this item and the next item are actually covered by what we've been working on over the past 6 months with the Little Blue Valley Sewer District. And the one positive thing I can say is that implementing it this fiscal year will result in an estimated savings of over $100,000 for our city. So it really is a much more accurate way of determining the bills that go out to the different organizations. Like I said, there's 14 customers. I think Middle Big Creek has how many of those customers, Mike? I knew, because we're split between Little Blue and Middle Big Creek. Once you get across the Alexander Creek Ridge over there, it goes over to, but I think all we've got is parts of Lee Summit, Pleasant Hill, like 14 homes in the county, and because they sit on the board. You've got Mullendike, Dykeland, and I think that's about it. Lake Winnebago is also in that. So Everybody has looked at this study from Raftellus. They did a great job in presenting. Mike sat in on a presentation. I think Mr. Fearborn sat in on a work session that they did on that, and everybody's in favor of this. So I just wanted to offer up that report, and if I can answer any questions, I'll be happy to. If there aren't any, did you have a question?
I was going to say you had me at $100,000, so yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
I move
Townsend.
that we approve Bill 3578, service contract with the Little Blue Valley Sewer District.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I too like the sound of 100,000, and I will second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3578. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3579 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3579 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an amended and restated service contract for sewer service with the Middle Big Creek Sewer District.
And actually, to add to what I'd mentioned previously, what this does is it standardizes the rate through both the district and the sub-district, because we had been charging $35 a connection fee. And so you wouldn't necessarily think that that would be an appropriate fee for, well, which is the power plant that which wants to come on board and discharges about 500,000 gallons a day. So they wouldn't necessarily be, it would be fair to just charge them $32.50. So we went with a flow rate and a metering system that will take care of that in the area, and they're working on that now to design that. So that, just to add to that, it standardizes the rates for both the district and the sub-district. Any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Move that we approve Bill 3579, service contract with Middle Big Creek Sewer District.
Thank you. Is there there's a motion made? Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3579. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. That brings us to our public comments section. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time for any reason, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I will now move on to the mayor-council communication, and I'll start with Mr. Circo tonight. We'll just work around the room.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, thank you to Captain Wilson. Has a great presentation. I've been on board with those ideas for a long time in insurance and everything, and I push those with a lot of people. You know, don't leave things in the car. Don't give criminals a reason to want to break into your vehicle, because they always walk by looking. If you leave something, they will break in. And so I've always told people that's hide them, stick them under a seat, whatever you need to do. And your presentation was very spot on for safety in the communities when you go shopping or whatever you're doing. Parking your cars at night if they're outside and not in a secure garage. Hide things, lock things. A lot of people leave them unlocked thinking, well, we're in a safe city. Nobody's going to come in here and do that. But criminals go where the money is. Criminals are always working to find where the money is in the good objects, and they want to steal. Saying that, so thank you for that. That's always a plus. And I have been notified, you know, patrolmen come by, not recently, but, you know, my garage door being open, they knocked at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've had some of my other people say, hey, please come by. My garage was up. And I appreciate that. I think that's a good thing. The patrolmen come by, they're warning people so they don't have someone steal their car, break in their house. So appreciate that from our patrolmen. Other thing is, I was out of town, I wasn't here, but I love the idea of that 100,000 going to the parks. That I think is a great thing for that playground. We want to get that off the ground and really get that completed as quick as we can. And I appreciate you guys all here on the council and stuff, kind of with Mr. Fairborn and bring that idea together and kind of pushing that forward. I think it's a plus for that playground. But thank you all. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like a news organization that comes on later to edit themselves, I'm going to say that the meeting was Missouri Municipal League last year in January in Sugar Creek, and I believe Councilman Jacobson was not there. I was thinking of a different meeting, and I was with the mayor. But I will try to find that presentation from them and get it to the rest of the council. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo Councilman Holman's comments earlier about Ward Road and how fast we're getting to that. I do take the opportunity to bring up GO bonds with neighbors and other residents every time I can, thanking them for voting for that. And for us to get it to this quick, I think demonstrates our resolve and our dedication and how sincere we were about that. So I want to echo those comments. The budget. Mr. Fearborn, I want to thank you and your staff for an awesome job in that budget once again this year. That is an incredibly comprehensive piece of work. It's, I'm sure, exhaustive. I assume it goes into effect on November 1, and November 2, you start working on next year's. Is that how that works? And so, but all of you did an awesome job. It's important that we have a balanced budget, and it's, I mean, you've won awards in the past for it, and you get an award from me every year, but mine probably don't count as much. So, and then finally, I do want to thank yourself and staff for coming in this evening on a federal holiday. I know a lot of people enjoyed the day off. I actually did as well, but here you are working. I know you had, was it a professional development day classes, so all of you worked today. So I want you to know that I want to thank you personally very much for coming in on a day that when many got a day off, but it just shows that all of you are willing to take that, willing to go the extra mile, and shows your dedication to the city. So I want you to know that I think all of us recognize it, but I certainly want to make sure that you know I do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't think of anything to add more than what my colleagues have said, so I have nothing this evening.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Want to thank the city staff for all their work on the budget, like I heard previously as well. I do know we had a budget amendment tonight, and I know Mr. Fearborn does not like to present those, but I'll add, you know, in a year with COVID and all the uncertainty and all the craziness going on, there wasn't a whole lot there, and they did a great job of managing our city last year, or this year, through all that. I'm going to jinx myself as well. It's a great time to be a city councilman in Ward 4. There's a lot of great projects coming our way. Haven't had a lot of citizen issues. I'm sure my inbox will be full when I get home for saying that now, but you know, between TB Hanna and the ice rink improvements and the splash park that'll be opening up in the spring, from Ward Road to Kurzweil to 58, looking forward to seeing all these projects come to fruition here in the near future. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll agree with everything my colleague here said and pass the baton.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my comment's going to be from one of those 30,000 feet up. You know, as we've gone and through this year, there's been a whole lot of changes going on for all of us. But as I watch around the country, I see a lot of places in the United States that are regressing. People are leaving, businesses are going away, and it's very sad. And when I look at our city, I see the exact opposite. I see people wanting to come here and live. I see businesses wanting to invest. From Mr. Catarat's report, homeowners wanting to invest. Just the total opposite. And I just want to commend everybody in this room for that, because I think it's taken everybody to do that. And one of the things that I've noticed is you never hear an excuse from our city staff or city manager about COVID-19. And think of you and your personal life and your business life today. There's nothing that I don't deal with that the first thing that comes out of the recording is that due to COVID-19. And so they're lowering our expectations. Not in the city of Raymore. We're going to come out of this year. Actually, our city's going to be better. Our city's going to look better. It's going to have more, more roads, more parks, everything all around. Just look around the country. How many cities can say that? We can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I can't help but concur with Councilmember Barber's statements. I felt very excited tonight. I felt we had an affirmation of our vision, especially with the reports from Mr. Cataret on the uptick and surge in housing permits. But beyond that, if you think back about 5 years ago, Mr. Fearborn came on and he started immediately fine-tuning the processes of the city and the staff. And now, just as I mentioned before, what we used to take an entire Saturday to do, we were able to dispose of in about 15 to 20 minutes due to all the good work that's done. And we got the most significant portion of the business done tonight with the first reading of the budget, which is, as Mr. Fearborn says, the single most important item that we take care of. But if you look at that, if you look at the comments on both ends, think about the bond project where we put money towards a major project outside of our city over there at the bridge and I-49, which is not in our city, but it's become our vision to expand our scope because it affects our citizens. And then you heard the comments tonight about the improvement of Ward Road, the roundabouts at Prairie and Ward, and then the talk of, as Councilmember Townsend has talked about and screamed from the rafters for some time, the important connections to the city out there at 291. So we see our vision expanding and taking shape and really being an affirmation of what you've talked about in the past number of years in your State of the City speech, sir. It's really coming together, and it's so important, even though it's outside our boundaries, it affects our citizens on an everyday basis. So this is really great news. It's been a very interesting evening, sir. Thank you.
I totally agree. Thank you very much, and I concur totally and have really nothing to add myself tonight. So I would, actually, we do need to move into executive session, so I'd entertain a motion to do so. Mr. Townsend.
Excuse me. I move that we move into executive session in accordance as authorized by revised Missouri Statute 610.021, subsection 3 for subsection 3.
Okay, thank you. Motion been made to move into executive session to discuss personnel matters as authorized by RSMO 610.021, parent 3. I'd entertain a second.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move into executive session from our seats where we're seated. I'll ask those folks that aren't a part of the executive session to please leave the room. We will, after adjournment from executive session, come back to regular session for